One. Welcome to the Lightforge. This is Bugda.
Hi, this is Merps.
So, the meta's happening.
I mean,
Still.
it's always happening. It's like you saying life is happening.
Oh, the meta of Hearthstone Arena, also known as Life.
All right.
Um, what we didn't talk about last week, while Muzzy was here, and if you haven't listened to that, give that a listen. It was a great talk. It's good to get a constructed player's perspective in on the arena. Um, So we didn't like I think we mentioned it, but we didn't really go into it because there wasn't time for that. Is that micro adjust happened between 2 weeks ago and last week? And the micro adjust, I'm just gonna just sum it up really quickly. Before 2 weeks ago, rogues were really dominating, hunters were really dominating. Although the win rates for hunters were somewhat below rogues, I think hunters were actually better. But that's why you see everybody in the Twitch rivals competition play like rogue, hunter, mage, a little bit of warlock, maybe a little bit of paladin. So they nerfed rogue, they nerfed hunter, they didn't touch mage. They didn't touch warlock, and they brought the other five classes all up to some degree. So those were the micro adjusts in the notes that Blizzard released.
Yep, that's kind of how it is. And if you look at HS Replay right now, the Blizzard micro adjust worked, as in the best class right now, essentially the best class is Warlock with a win rate of 52.4%. So this is me looking at HS Replay stats Sunday night, and 52.4% for the top class, very reasonable.
Very good.
Very, very good. And Warlock is one of those classes in which I would say, sort of, no matter what, if Priest is ever number one, it's like, oh man, it's really problematic. Warlock is a very safe number one. And then we got Mage as a very close number two. By the time you look at it, Mage might even be number one. They're so close. It's
Yeah.
52.2%. So it's a difference of 0.2%, which means it could just flip very easily.
And I know like the current iteration of Mage is kind of crazy. I don't know, like this year, like Blizzard's just making Mage go crazy with the RNG, more so than usual. Rise of Shadows was the same way, but normally Mage is a very safe class also to be at the top. I mean, Mage was at the very top for like 2 years, right at the start of the game's arena mode, and it was okay. Right, no one thought it was the best balance ever, but it was okay. And that was when Blizzard wasn't touching anything. So with Warlock and Mage definitively on top, there's a gap after that to the next classes. We're in a pretty good spot at the top. Like if you go 12 wins, you're not going to see the same repeating classes like you used to see. You're not going to have to draft with a particular strategy against rogues, for example, or hunters. You're in a pretty diverse meta.
Yeah, definitely. And it is pretty funny that you mention it, because I would say in any meta before this, I think a lot of people are, well, no, you're always going to get complaints about the top class. That's just going to happen. That's human nature. But I think people are relatively okay with Mage being number one, except now that we have Puzzle Box of Yogg-Saron, and worse is a lot of spells that give you Puzzle Box of Yogg-Saron.
Yes.
So it's like the fact that Puzzle Box exists, if you weren't able to get it from other places and if you could only draft it, whatever, it doesn't really
It's
matter.
an epic card.
It's an epic card, right? But the fact that you can get it from so many other cards, then that is a little bit problematic. And for a card that is so, quote, random, it's not random. It's not that random at all. And um, it's sort of insane for a 10 mana card. Its deck win rate is 62%.
Jeez.
Yeah, its deck win rate is about the same as a Wrapped Golem. Like for something as stable and as consistent as Wrapped Golem, Puzzle Box, which comes out 3 turns later, has the same deck win rate. And then, of course, the
Literally, I mean, you say surprising, but it's like we literally rate them 3 points apart.
yeah, yeah.
So
But I think people would be, some people might be surprised by it, right?
yeah,
Something with such quote RNG when it's really not that
See,
much RNG.
I think people will be surprised the other way. So many people seem to think Puzzle Box, if you can play it, right? Like it's just an auto win. Um, I think maybe you're thinking Rap Golem is so good, Puzzle Box with so much RNG can't be that good, or shouldn't be that good.
Well,
I'm
this is
thinking
also
like,
deck win rate, right? So yeah, obviously, if you're able to play it,
oh,
you're
okay,
already in a decent spot. This
okay,
is
that's
deck
fair.
win rate.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So this is if it is in your deck, just like if Wrapped Golem is in your deck. So it is. So Puzzle Box right now is its deck win rate is almost exactly the same as Wrapped Golem, Siamet, and Onyxia. So these are, obviously some pretty good cards that are in its company. But
Yeah,
yeah, people aren't happy about that. Understandably so. However, Warlock, Mage, they're hanging out at that 52%. And at the bottom, bringing up the rear, we got good old Warrior at 45.6%. This is not egregiously low, but,
yeah, just low,
still
regular low,
just
not
low,
terrible.
regular. Yep. So we have a delta of approximately 7% between the top class and the very bottom class. That's relatively healthy.
It's acceptable.
Uh, that's acceptable. Yeah, definitely. We've definitely gone through metas in which the delta was more than 10%, and that gets a little bit insane. But it's about 7% difference between Warlock and Warrior, and there's not the biggest jump is basically from Mage, which is number 2, to Rogue, which is number 3, at around like 1.5%. That's like the biggest jump that you really see.
Yep.
So it's pretty smooth all the way down. So whatever Blizzard did, and they don't show the exact sort of like small details of what they did. They kind of tell you, but whatever they did, it worked. If because I think a lot of people are looking at the meta right now and be like, oh, it's definitely playable.
Yeah, all the classes are playable. I was playing Warrior the other night. It's not good, but it didn't feel like I had no shot. It felt a lot better than playing Warrior like 4 weeks ago, when when it was a pretty bad feeling. Um, the other, yeah. So we talked about if you want to listen to like how to play Rogue or Hunter or Mage or Warlock in this meta, you should listen to the podcast that came one before Rivals. So that would be one, 2, 3. That would be 3 podcasts before this one. Um, that's the Lightforge that you should listen to because it hasn't really changed that much. Like I don't know what Blizzard did to the offering rates because they don't really tell us, but mages still play like mages. Nothing changed. Warlocks still play like warlocks. Nothing changed. Why? Because literally nothing changed there. Rogues still play the same way that the old rogues do, even though it's just less powerful, right? You're like less guaranteed infinite card advantage. You have slightly lower power cards. The play style of mid range, you're gonna have almost infinite card advantage, get a lot of pings, like all that stuff holds true. Hunters, same deal, right? It got nerfed even harder, or I mean, they probably were nerfed the same amount of hardness because they used to be 2% apart. Now they're 1% apart. But Hunters still have a 49.5% win rate, and that mid-range Hunter style that is the most popular and I think functions the best. It still works. You can still draft an aggro Hunter, and it does not work as well, just like before. But it still works if you get the right it's a mix of getting the right cards and the right like opponents, right? And with Warlock at the very top, there's like there's a better chance that you high roll as compared to some of the other classes being on top.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So, do you want to talk about some of these bad classes? Because we've talked about some of the good classes previously, or where do you want to start?
Yeah, I figure we talk more about the bad classes. I guess to start with, like, what's a warlock meta look like, right? There is no warlock meta right now. It's the highest winning class, but I'm pretty sure mage is seen significantly more frequently. I don't know if we have like stats for that. I don't know if HS Replay just has them ready to the public, but they publish it now and then.
They publish it now and then. I don't have it right in front of me,
Yeah,
but I do believe what you said is accurate.
yeah. So you're gonna see mages actually more often, and mages don't do anything in particular right now. They're like a weird RNG combo kind of class. I guess kind of control, but they still have Pyroblast, and people still pick Pyroblast. So mages are kind of centrist in terms of how people play and draft them. So you're really in this meta, and those two are definitely the two best classes. So you're basically in this meta now where anything goes, right? Where there's no like set kind of play style. And the speed of the meta, which people had remarked, and we had remarked was faster than we thought it was going to be, has definitely slowed down now to where I think everybody and us thought it would be. Like, this is the meta, the correct meta, right? The correct Saviors meta, I'll call it, in terms of speed. It's not the slowest by a long shot. I would say most of 2018 metas were slower than this one, but it's also nowhere, not even similar, right, to the GVG meta and the meta that we had just come out of before this one, which had all the GVG cards back.
Yep. All right. So it seems like you got nothing that much to say about warlocks.
Yeah. I just want to point out that the meta is normal. Like, this is a great time to kind of to test your not so much your fundamental skills because there's a little too much swing for this to be a good test of fundamentals. And that's also why druids, for example, are doing really poorly, despite the fact that they get decent cards. Like I've played druids in this meta, they feel okay, but I'm never at a point where I'm like, oh, this deck has a good chance of going 12. No, none of those decks have a good chance of going 12. But it is a good time to develop and a good meta to develop your skills in the arena, especially in this. Well, as I'm saying this, I realize that they're going to take away buckets. But kind of in this new system, usually there's larger swings in the arena, especially with the bucket system, since the bucket system has been implemented. And this feels very normal for that kind of system. That system may go away in 2 weeks. Like the meta's about to end, by the way. We're in the new 2 month meta period, so the meta's ending in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something like that. They haven't announced what the next meta is, but they'll presumably do that in a couple of weeks. And that may be the time that they test out the removal of buckets. So, okay. So maybe not as applicable as I thought, but it's still a good thing to learn. Um, think of this as the preparedness meta, or like you have to have a plan to do things. You're not always going to be on the board, even if you're good, even if you're trying to be aggro. You have to be able to come back from the board. You have to be able to adjust to the flow of the game. You have to know your win conditions really well and have more than one win condition in a deck. Because decks with just one win condition don't do very well in this meta. Like it's pretty flexible, and you should it's a good way, it's a good place. Like I feel like whenever I'm playing in this meta, I'm learning more. Like that doesn't happen in every meta.
No, it definitely doesn't. Some metas, it definitely just feels like what you're playing and what you're learning are not widely applicable skills. You're really just learning. It's like these little nuances that help with this very specific meta that you probably won't see again, right?
Yeah.
And this is what Adukta means by it. It's like, oh, this is a normal meta. So you can take over a lot of skills that you've had before, and you have a higher chance of being able to translate the skills that you learn from this meta to other metas that are quote normal. Okay, you want to talk about the worst class, warriors?
Yeah, okay. So warriors are the worst class. They're probably not the worst class. I'm pretty sure shamans are the worst class. We're gonna play a shaman later today on the arena coop.
I know.
That'll be fun. But warriors are the worst performing class. Warriors right now, like if you want to make a successful warrior, right? What do? There's two ways to make a successful warrior. They both work, but the one thing that you really have to do in this meta is, and okay, so the first thing to know about warriors in the meta is that they don't have a lot of weapons. You're not being offered a lot of weapons. You used to be offered a shockingly ridiculously low amount of weapons before they did the micro adjust. After the micro adjust, you're now offered like almost a normal amount of weapons, which is still not enough.
Yep.
So I think you can maybe pass like one weapon in a draft, but you can't pass much more than that, or stuff is going to or your warrior's not going to feel very warrior-y, and a warrior without weapons is kind of weird. Especially because you also don't have something like oh, how am I forgetting the card's name? The Whirlwind
What
Echo card.
Warpath?
Warpath. There we go. You also don't have warpaths for your control things. Dragon Roar's here, but why are you a warrior, right? You really want your weapons. We talked about how important it is to be flexible in the meta. Well, weapons are very flexible. They can give you card advantage. They can give you tempo. They can give you reach. Like you got to adapt it to the situation if you have a mid-rangey kind of card. So that's the first thing to look out for in a draft. The second thing to look out for warriors is your taunt synergies. You gotta get some taunt synergies going because taunts are also very flexible. You can hide stuff behind them and go face, or you can protect your face if you're low on health so that you could use your weapons, or just because your opponent's being really aggressive, right? Taunts have an offensive and defensive dimension. And if you have a normal-ish kind of like deck, you're going to be able to use both of them depending on what kind of matchups you get. So taunts in this meta specifically, warriors have a bunch of things that synergize with taunts as well, and they're bucketed. They're bucketed a little high, but you want to get in the position where you can high roll a taunt deck because for warriors, the taunt decks really do a lot of damage when they come together. It's like in mage right now, right? You want to give yourself the option to have a flak mage deck because flak mage decks are so ridiculous. So like maybe err on the side of picking a secret, right? Don't go all the way until you have a flak mage. Same here for warrior. Like maybe err on the side of taking taunts. And then if you end up just with a whole bunch of taunts, then those cards that buff all the taunts become ridiculous and pickable and win conditions. And if they don't, so what, right? You have very flexible things in taunts. It's not like secrets, where if you don't end up with any secret synergies, you're a dead mage.
Yeah, definitely. And you're going to be able to see taunt in warriors. If you go to HS Replay right now, the most common card found in warrior decks is actually Tomb Warden. Tomb Warden, for those of you who don't know, is the 8 mana 3/6 mech taunt. Battlecry summon a copy of this minion. So at worst, you're spending 8 mana to get 2 mech fen creepers. Not bad, not bad at all. But if you are able to buff up your taunts a little bit, do a little bit of hand buffs, or just survive until you're able to drop these taunts, it's really helpful. So, I mean, just looking at the most common cards in Warriors right now, which is Tomb Warden, followed by Dragon Roar, Armored Goon. Armored Goon is the 6 mana 6/7. Whenever your hero attacks, gain 5 armor. Execute and Arcanite Reaper. You can kind of see, okay, so this is the kind of warrior that I should be able to draft. And also, from facing warriors, this is what they're most likely going to have. So you know that you have this archetype. And once you see this as well, you immediately recognize, okay, I can kind of see why why warriors aren't great because they have a lot of stuff that doesn't really have initiative, is very mid slash late game oriented, but
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have that crazy value or that crazy swing potential that a lot of other classes currently have. So you have a lot of reactionary cards, you have a lot of taunt cards, but if you're going into the late game, well, you don't have the really powerful bombs that mage and priest do. And if you're trying to get out and tempo a little bit more, well, you've never had the class to compete with, for example, rogues in that regard, and you're definitely not going to be able to get those on average. So it's easy to see why warriors in general are near the bottom there. And like Adulta says, you can certainly draft good warrior decks. It's just from what you're expected to get, it is a little bit hard because you do have to kind of do a lot of risk assessment. You have to be comfortable with not being able to have the perfect card for all of these scenarios. And the awkwardness of warriors really, unfortunately, shows in this meta.
Yeah. Um, One more thing to know about warriors when you're trying to figure out a way to make this flexible deck to make it kind of go in the middle a little more rather than try to be too controlled. Because if you try to put a lot of large cards in your deck, it's going to be rather inconsistent to curve out and things like that. Every time, like, other classes have these things called like card advantage and cards that draw cards, you don't. You have battle rage, like you may get a copy of it in your deck, you may not. You now have Dragon Roar too. Dragon Roar's back, so that's really good for that. But that's about it. So the way to think about it is you make sure that every time you draft a weapon, like especially something as big like Arcanite Reaper, which is Arcanite Reapers are everywhere in the draft. It's great. Uh, think of it as card advantage because you're going to get 2 hits out of it, which means you basically have 2 cards for the price of one. And that's gonna be very useful in terms of how you're doing the math in your head because your hero power doesn't give you any card advantage. So you normally like at the start of the game probably just want to like if you're thinking about going into the long game, right? Like going to turn 12 and after turn 12 and trying to compete with your opponents on card advantage, you're like 2 cards down. Like frankly, like as a warrior, you're just 2 cards down to start. So you got to make up those 2 cards and get more cards than that to even the card advantage game, which is probably not going to happen. But you still need to know how fast your deck needs to go, and that for calculating that speed, like look at weapons as potentially 2 cards, potentially 0 cards, and a power blast to the face, right? That's the kind of flexibility you need to trade on. And if your card is getting to the point where you think you can compete decently with higher card advantage decks, not like the ridiculous card advantage decks, you're never going to be able to compete with that. But if you think you could be a slower mid range deck, that's the time when you really have to start thinking about not taking twos. Like usually warriors want to take twos because their hero power does nothing. But if you have enough threes and you have enough taunts, then you can recover from not having enough twos. You also don't have Warpath, but you want cards that can like fill in the gap, right? Like Dragon Ball Scorchers, like Primordial Drakes, even like Cleaves and things like that will help. So you can definitely create a very viable, like slowish mid range kind of deck without more than like a couple of twos, and those twos you take because they're like hugely disproportionate value, right? Like if it's a quicksand elemental or a stubborn gastropod or a Nephroset ritualist, you're like, okay, I'll take those. And you'll end up with a couple twos if you try to go for taunts anyway, because Frightened Flunky is really good. Like you're probably going to take a Frightened Flunky whenever you see it. Cruel Task. Like these are cards that still retain their use in the late game, card advantage wise. So if you just like wait for those cards to come up, you'll still end up with a couple twos in your deck, and you'll be able to build a more competitive deck card advantage wise. You don't have to do that. You could just put like twos like a normal deck and put 5, 6 twos in it and play normal, but just know that you're going to run out of steam faster than your opponents.
Yep. Yeah. I got nothing more to say. I mean, the class identity of these classes, it hasn't really changed dramatically. That's kind of the thing. It's like what you think these classes should be. That's kind of what they are right now, um, and they just sort of play out. It's
Yeah.
kind of it. You can see my enthusiasm here.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fine time to play warrior. I feel like it's definitely like not a good class right now. But if you want to play warrior, it's definitely not as such a huge disadvantage as it sometimes is, as it quite frequently is, really. Um, so yeah, if you want to play warrior, now's a good time to do it. Even though it is the worst performing class, like it's not that bad.
It's not that bad, right? So I think we can transition to the second worst class, in which we might also say is not that bad, and that's Druid. This is one of those classes that Advocata will always advocate for and say that it is better than the HS replay stats will give it, because Druid is really about flexibility and options. So the better you are at using all of your options and leveraging your flexibility, the better the class itself is. It doesn't just deal with raw power from the cards. And Druid right now is just a little bit ahead of Warriors. And if you look at the cards that are Most commonly found in Druid decks, they are Wrath, Tortolan Forager, Starfire, and then you have some neutrals like Bone Wraith, Pit Croc. So Druid is kind of just it's a mid-rangey kind of boring class. It's got some initiative, it's got some value, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But what it just really doesn't have is that heavy hitter, that one card that sort of just that can win you the game. And what you have to do is, you can't really ignore your early game because druids definitely can't go that mage priest route. Um, so you can't load up on heavies. You can't go too fast and just say, I'm going to do tokens plus average roar. We had that period for druid in which it worked. This is not that
Yeah.
period. So you just have to play just straight up vanilla, like mid range with quality cards, good drafting, good risk assessment, mulligan well, and yeah, like just by saying that, you can kind of understand why it's not performing that high.
Yeah,
That's it. Yeah.
it's doing a lot better now than it was before they buffed it. I think less to do with how much they buffed it, and more to do with the fact that druids are just better when the meta's more even. Because you get the nuances out, and they impact the meta more. I mean, they impact the games more when your opponents are not being ridiculous. Your opponents are going to be ridiculous. You're never going to win a single game as druid. So, uh, so one of the things the druid suffers from in this meta, and I don't think it's a good meta for the druid, even though flexibility is good in this meta, and druids in theory have a lot of flexibility, is the flexibility right now that other classes have are starting to become on par with druids for a lot of them, and that was kind of druids thing. So now druids don't have anything, and it just feels like a very weak version of whatever else you could be playing in the top 4 or 5 classes. And making that problem even worse, there's not a single card in all of druid. Okay, fine, there's one card in all of druid that is seriously misbucketed, like super misbucketed by more than like 20 points. There's one card. It's Crystal Merchant, and like it's an epic creature, so like minion, so you're not gonna see it all that often. But if you look at our tier list, like you have stuff that's like misbucketed, right? Like Overflow in the bottom of the 5th bucket is definitely low, but it's like 11 points higher than a former champ, which is in the same place, right? It's like 15 points higher than a bug collector. You're not winning the lottery here if you get offered overflow. You kind of are. It changes the shape of your deck, but you're like from a value perspective, you aren't really like winning too much, right? Like Hidden Oasis is in the top of the 6th bucket at 123. But you have like giant wasps in that bucket too, right? You have like I don't know, there's tigers in that bucket. Like you're getting about 15 points of value on Hidden Oasis from those cards. Uh, but it's not a big winner. You don't have any big winners anywhere. Like druids right now should be what every class is like, but other classes have missed buckets. The big card that's coming in that came in this expansion is Oasis Surger, and that's rated like a 190. So it should be top of the 1st bucket. They put it in the bottom of the 1st bucket because they barely put any cards in the top of the 1st bucket. You're still gonna have to choose between picking it and like Power of the Wilds and Primordial Drakes and Rap Golems. Like you're not really getting a huge advantage there. It's just it's too good, right? Like you're gonna pick Oasis Surge when you get that card. You're gonna make a huge impact on your deck regardless. Um, so overall, you
Yeah.
just there's not a lot of place to get values from. There's not a lot of places to get synergies from. It just there's not much going on in Druid.
Yeah, that was kind of the unfortunate part of it where i- druids really needed at least one or two kind of class cards that they can count on seeing uh, a lot and having it be that value pick in every single draft. Just like how Fan of Knives was and has been for rogues for the longest time, right? Fan of Knives is something that could easily be bucketed much higher for rogues. You go into drafts and you know that, hey, there's a decent chance I'm going to get Fan of Knives, and Fan of Knives is just really good for the current meta and all the metas before that as well.
Yeah.
So that's one of the prime examples of just stability going into the draft with a class, and you're just like, okay, well, I have that in mind.
Side
But
point. Why do people not pick Phantom Knives? Have we not gotten like
people don't.
so many months slash years into Phantom Knives being the fourth bucket that it should be moving up by now at least?
I have no idea, but
It's a
like
150 card in the top of the fourth bucket, and it's like a
yes,
classic card that's in every single meta for Rogue.
yes. I don't know. Well, here's the thing. I think you see tons of arena streamers who see Phantom Knives, appreciate it. I mean, you even had Muzzy come on, and then as soon like one of the first things he recognized, he's like, "Yeah, Phantom Knives is insane."
Yeah,
Just if you're a good player, I mean, okay, not everyone's going to be Muzzy levels of good, but like he
but
doesn't
you don't
really
have
know
to
the arena.
be. You don't have to be
Yeah,
that
yeah.
level of good to see how great Phantom Knives is.
Right. As a fourth bucket. If it were in the second bucket, it's like, okay, we don't really need to discuss it because you're still we're still having some tough choices here,
Yeah, but
right?
you're putting this next to like Nesting Rock.
Yeah. It's like Phantom Dives versus Nesting versus like Huge Toad or versus
Oh
I
God.
don't know, just a Yeti, right? Like
Right,
just a Yeti.
a Yeti.
A Yeti, right? Exactly. Spellzerker is in the same.
Hmm.
So that's what you see. It's like Spellzerker, Yeti, uh, Phantom Knives, or embarrassingly, Razor Petal Lasher versus
Oh
Phantom
God.
Knives. Just stuff like that. So I don't know. I guess not enough people pick it, or maybe Blizzard. It hasn't reached that critical capacity that you need. Uh, but yeah, like that's a huge difference between a class that has been doing well. I'm not saying it's all because of Phantom Knives, but it certainly helps, right?
It's
Having
a lot because of Phantom Knives.
yeah, um,
Um,
eh,
like what
but
does
Druid
Rogue have in
just
every meta? A hero power on Phantom Knives.
yeah,
Like I can't
and
remember the
also
last time I picked against the Phantom Knives when it wasn't at least my third.
yeah, something like that. Or I had too much initiative and not enough bodies or something. That happened in a draft.
Hmm.
But back to your point about the flexibilities of druids not being as important, you see much more not only neutral pings, but pings given to classes that
Hmm.
traditionally didn't have pings. So hunters and paladins and warlocks, they all have pings now. You should
Oh,
expect
hunters
all
are
of
the
them.
number one ping class now.
Definitely, yeah. Hunters definitely have pings. Paladins, uh, have pings a decent amount of times. Warlock, the most common card that Warlocks have is actually Mortal Coil.
Really?
Just remember
That's
that.
interesting.
Oh, sorry. No, it's Demon Bolt now. It used to be Mortal Coil. Now Demon Bolt has overtaken it.
The Mortal Coil is
Uh,
number two.
Mortal Coil is number two, and
Interesting.
by the time that we talk again
Yeah,
or you
it
check
could
again, it
change.
might. Yeah,
Yeah.
and the number four card is Dark Peddler, which could get the Mortal Coil or Elven Archer or
Not
something.
as much anymore. So, if you guys, another update that we haven't mentioned, but we probably should, is they changed for the entire game how Discover works. You used to get
Mm-hmm.
4 times the offering odds on class cards, which made stuff like what is that card? Stonehill, Defender, and Paladin kind of ridiculous. For getting a taunt that is like Tyrion or like
Tarum.
Tarum, yeah. It's like kind of ridiculous. So anyway, they changed it. Now it's all even. They didn't even do the thing where it's like just double the chance, or plus 50% the chance, like arena offering odds. They just flat out got rid of it, and it's now even odds for all cards to show up. Um, it
Yeah.
doesn't it doesn't actually change. Like a lot of people have asked, oh, is the tier list going to reflect that? The tier list currently does not reflect that, but we tested a couple cards out. It actually does not make that big of a difference. So I don't know when the next update is going to be, but we're like in places like you think especially um for something like Dark Peddler, you think it was a huge difference, but it's actually just like a few points of difference, like less than five.
Yeah. Definitely doesn't help out Warriors though with their flunky selection. It's another one of those things,
Yeah.
right? Where what is it really impacting? Yeah, and one of the things is definitely the frightened flunkies. It's an unfortunate side effect where one of the cards that was a staple of the taunt warrior just got a little bit worse.
Yep. Okay. So that's druid. Let's talk about shaman. Okay. Shaman's interesting class in the arena right now. We're gonna play it later. I haven't played a lot of shaman. I played against shamans. I played shaman like twice. I did not enjoy it either time, and then I just like haven't gone back to it since they did the micro adjust. I'll be honest, I have no idea what to do with shaman right now in this meta. I'm not saying like it just feels bad to me no matter what I try to do with it. So we're talking about like the cards that are super misbucketed or whatever, right? Like Flame Tongue is always super misbucketed. Stormforge Axe is extremely misbucketed. Um, Plague of Murlocs, we rated really high, but I haven't like gone back and like really looked to see if it should be that high. But that is very misbucketed according to our tier list. But that's an epic card. You're not going to see it too often. I've actually never seen. I saw Plague of Murlocs like once being used by my opponent. I've never been offered it. Bloodlust is still one of those like pick one of in your deck and you're probably good cards. But what is that? What is that like? Lightning Storm. It's in the bottom of the second bucket, but Lightning Storm should be. I think we all know like a top bucket card. Unstable Evolution's back, which you could put that in any bucket and it's still insane. Like they don't really come together to like do anything.
I feel like right now with shamans, you really and this is one of the weaknesses of shamans. You can't go into a draft and say, okay, I'm almost guaranteed to get this sort of archetype or this sort of deck, right? And those are the kind of classes that will be very high in win percentage because whenever you have that consistency, whenever you have those expectations, it's much easier for people to draft and to play. I feel like for shaman nowadays, you have to really just sort of adapt to the draft and then after you go through a draft, really evaluate your win conditions and see how you win. So with shamans, you are going to have to play a little bit reactive or at least, tempo and then sort of remove behind it. You can't really play that, like just hold all the way and just earthquake, earthquake, lightning storm, and then, put down a big, huge minion bomb or whatever, because you're
Right.
just not going to get that kind of deck. But what you have to do in the draft is you have to evaluate like is my am I getting that bloodlust or am like you have to even evaluate. It's like, is my deck a bloodlust deck or is my deck a fungal mancer deck? And those are different, right? So for fungal mancer decks, you have to just sort of keep your minions around uh, uh and you want like decently sized minions. For Bloodlust, you just want to spread really wide. And then it's like, okay, well, how does that work with Evil Totem? How does that work with all of this stuff that I get? Maybe I pick the Firefly here. It's a lot of decisions, a lot of just really careful deck analysis during the draft without a set game plan going in. So it makes it really messy. I've certainly seen Shaman decks work, but if there is sort of a preconceived uh, kind of archetype, I haven't seen it, and I just don't think it exists.
Yeah. I keep like end up with a deck that's like a wide-ish kind of mid-range deck.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you just kind of end up with most times if you're picking stuff. Especially because Volcano and Earthquake, your two like board clears, are bucketed correctly, which is not a good thing because they're your two giant board clears. You get a little value from Lightning Storm, but Lightning Storm can get value of even if you're a aggressive deck or kind of a mid-range deck. So that's what I kind of end up with. I don't know if it's I don't know if I would recommend it. Um, yeah. I don't really just don't have a lot to add to this class, and we're gonna play it today, and we'll see how it goes. But it's gonna be another data point in my very small and limited view of this class right now in this meta.
Yeah, here's the thing. If you want to play Shaman, or if you're playing Shaman, ask yourself what do you want to do? If you just want to play Shaman because you like Shaman, sure. Just realize that number one, you're going to have to do a lot of on the spot evaluation for the draft and for the games, which is nothing new. But if your purpose is to kind of learn and to apply these skills broadly, Shaman is one of the worst classes to sort of do that with, just because the hero power and the class identity is just so weird. Shaman is just like really, 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 really weird. So if you want to play Shaman because you want to get better with Shaman specifically, or you just like the class, sure. But if the purpose is to get better, like fundamentally get better, just stick with the other classes, right? We're in a very vanilla kind of normal meta, so it's a great time to kind of build up your skills. If you want to play a class that is very snowbally, board dependent, play your paladin. They play that
Yep.
way right now. If you want to play that reactive control style, sure, you got your priest.
Hmm.
You can somewhat do that with warlocks as well. You can somewhat do that with mages as well. So just do that. I just don't see a huge reason to play shaman right now.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Like so much of shaman stuff doesn't benefit mid range. It
No.
benefits one of your polar opposites that eliminates the way you play the other way. But you have to make a decision on where to go in a draft, which means, and pretty early too, right? If you get offered, like, let's say, a volcano or an earth elemental, like, what do you pick? Like, if you pick the volcano, you can't do like fast mid range, like tokeny stuff anymore. It's not going to be as good. So, I don't know. It's it's a frustrating class right now. Certainly, the two times I played it, I did not get good results, and I did not like learn a lot about shaman. I learned about the meta, but not about shaman specifically. Okay, so let's move on from shaman. Maybe we'll have a better idea after today. So now we're out of, like, shaman was 73 was 47.3% on HS replay, which is already in the realm of, like, you can use this class. Like, shaman's not like terrible in this meta. I still think it's the least cohesive and worst class. I would put Druid above Shaman, Warrior definitely above Shaman. But after Shaman, we have two more classes we haven't talked about yet. 4, 5, and 6 are Paladin at 50.6%. Okay, we'll go 3, 4, 5, 6. So those three that we just talked about make up the definite bottom three. Then 3, 4, 5, 6 is Rogue at 50.7%, Paladin at 50.6%, Hunter at 49.5%, and Priest at 48.1%. So Priest is right now kind of in the middle between what I'll call the legitimate classes and then the classes you have to do something extra in. How do you how do people play Priest right now, Merps? Let's
Really scummy ways.
because this is
Real
one way
scummy.
I've seen people play Priest right now, and it doesn't feel good
No.
because I win all those games except for the ones I lose.
That's a great way to put it.
And the ones that I win, I'm like, what are you doing? You're not doing anything. How did you get to like 6-1 with this like silly deck that doesn't have a lot of stuff and you played 3 cards before you lost? And when I lose, it's like, well, literally nothing I could have done would have mattered.
Yep. Um, so I'll say right now that all right, if you guys know me, you guys know I like to play decks that are at the exact polar ends. I don't love to play mid-range decks. I can play them; they're fine. But what I love to do is go just supremely aggro, get under everyone, and hit their face, or the slowest, soul crushingest, scummiest priest decks. Like, oof, just really, um, just so good. But yeah, because of the quality of priest cards that you're able to get right now, and the amount of removals, and the natural ability of priests to leverage that into dropping tons of late game minions, you don't really have to draft early game minions at all. You can just draft AoE, and you can probably get that. I mean, look, between Nova, Mass Hysteria, Excavated Evil, and Shadow Madness, and Ripple, you're going to get enough.
Yeah.
Like going into the draft, you won't know exactly, okay, I can get one of each, right? Maybe you'll get a little bit more excavated evils. Maybe you'll get a little bit more mass hysterias. Who knows? But you're going to get the AoEs. So knowing that you're going to be able to get the AoEs, knowing that you're 100% going to get Entombs, which is the most common card found in Priest, that's solid. That's really good. And if you have good decision making, if you have sort of that that risk assessment there, like I said before, knowing that you can get a certain archetype
Yeah.
for priest going in, that's so powerful. That's so powerful. Now, priest once again is not higher up because you have to make all these right plays. You have to risk assess properly, and once you play in this style as well, so I played a pretty scummy priest earlier on this week as well. And um, what am I mulligan? Like in the mulligan, what am I looking for? Like I don't want any minions. I'm looking for my excavated evils. Like I'm specifically looking for my AOEs as well, so that I can win 30 turns later in fatigue. It's a disgusting way to play, but it really does
That's your
work.
style, though. That's your style. It's like it's the same way
Yeah.
when you play like Hunter, right? You want to be in the area where you're like, if I played well, I win,
Mhm.
right? I could mess up. RNG
Yeah.
could mess me up, but you can't mess me up.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, I have the
Um,
exact opposite philosophy. I live on my opponents messing up, on my opponents not taking advantage of my misplays, and on me being able to react to what they're doing. So that's why I'm always in the mid range style. But that's where Priest is right now on the control side. Like,
yeah, it definitely
if you
is.
play Priest well, you make the good decisions. You may not always win, but there was never anything your opponent could have done to change the outcome besides like throw the game.
Yeah. So I would say in my losses. So the priest deck I was talking about, I got 8 wins. One was a DC at the beginning of the game, so that was whatever. That was just a loss. Um, and the other two losses were just like I mulliganed for the AoEs, and then I held my opponents off as long as possible. I gave myself plenty of opportunities to draw my AoEs, but I didn't get them.
Yep.
So it's just like,
Yeah, you just
okay,
lost to RNG.
you just lose to RNG. But the games in which I was able to make decisions, risk assess, even if they swing it with some crazy cards here or there, Priest is really good at absorbing crazy stuff happening to them
Yeah.
because of their removal tools. Because, uh, like for example, I also had a Plague of Death in there, which is just it. That's the ultimate eraser, right? It's like they do something absolutely insane. Like pop off one turn with like a huge unstable evolution turn and really lucky with that as well. It's like that's fine. We have Plague of Death. Let's just reset and then go back to the way things were. So Priest is really good at that right now. It's not the playstyle for everyone. Also, that 8-win run took me 4 hours. But I play slow, so
Oh god.
obviously that's a thing.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it's quite successful. You can find a lot of success with it if you don't you know turn all of your hair white by the end.
Yeah. And just in case you're like not a fan of a super slow priest style, because that's really the way to go. Mid range priest works too. This is a totally fine
Definitely.
meta for mid range priest. Now, I don't see a lot of people playing it. I've played it a couple times and it's been fine. I have no complaints about it. You still have your Norshire cleric that's bucketed where it's bucketed. You have your Holy Nova, which is the priest's most misbucketed card. It's not even misbucketed that hard. It's in the top of the second bucket, but it's like an auto pick because it's better than all the first bucket cards besides Psychic Scream. So Holy Nova works even better when you're on the board, right? So it's those are your two like main mid-range linchpins, and you're gonna get a little less value out of your board cleary cards, so you're gonna take fewer of them. But what's good about Priest is you get offered so many of them that you're still gonna have your tools. Like you're still going to have like whatever you want from the board clear area, you can get even while going mid range because you just get offered so many of them. Like Mage is the same. Um, like a Holy Ripple, it's not really competing with that much unless it happens to bump up against an unidentified elixir. Um, Okay, that's priest. It's a good class right now. I think it's a better class than it's performing. Uh,
I totally agree. I think you can find that consistency with Priest, and that's really the thing with Priest. It's like going in, you can like before the very first card is picked, you can say, "Okay, I want to draft a control Priest,"
yep.
and yeah, like you're gonna be able to draft it. You're gonna get the entombs, you're gonna get like the AoEs, and the other stuff. You have to fill in the holes properly, and of course you have to play like really methodical and play correctly.
Boring. Correct
I know.
play. Methodical play. All right.
Correct methodical play over like 20
Yeah,
turns.
right. Like over a million turns. It's okay. Um, we're gonna end on the very last class that we hadn't talked about before, and it is a class. It is the only class that was buffed enough, or maybe Hunter was nerfed enough that it overtook one of the old top four. Paladin's number 4 right now on win rate at 50.6, which is right next to Rogue, basically the same, and they're about 1% above Hunter. And Hunter is about 1.5% above Priest. That being said, I still think Hunter is definitely better than Paladin right now. HS replay stats aren't like they're pulled from average win rate of like 4.5 or maybe 5, and there's a lot of noise in there as well. Like I always think druids do better. I always think rogues do better. Paladins do better. Mages do better when you go higher in player quality, and paladins go down. So in this case, I wouldn't like super buy the hype, but I do think that paladins are probably right there with priest when it comes to like that tier that is pretty much on par with rogues and hunters right now, but maybe like a half step below.
I
Um,
could definitely see the reason why Paladin is slightly ahead of Hunter, just because their most common card is Keeper of Oldemon, and Keeper of Oldemon is the ultimate kind of like, like stop, no
GG.
having fun, no big minions. It's a mistake eraser, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I talk about mistakes, a lot of people don't really identify. It's like, oh, they dropped a big minion. I made a mistake. But really, a lot of times, the opponent getting ahead on the board and being allowed to drop a big minion and having it actually be a threat, it's caused by mistakes on your end,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes. So when I say the Keeper of Oldemon is a kind of mistake eraser, sometimes people think of mistake erasers as a flame strike, right? It's like, oh, that's
I
a
mean, that's a
mistake
mistake
eraser.
eraser too.
It is. Yeah, but Keeper of Oldemon is such a great mistake eraser, and that will always be great for the like all arena players, like no matter your skill level, right?
I don't
So
know. I
if
think it
you're
disproportionately is beneficial to players who make more mistakes
well,
or who
yeah,
have a higher percent chance of making a mistake. So let's say you're like a 5 win player. You're probably making a mistake every 4 turns. Like you're not making a ton of mistakes. You're winning like almost double what you should win. Like you're winning. You're making mistakes every game. Don't get me wrong, but you're not making that many. So Keeper of Oldemon helps you erase that and then still win the game.
yeah,
If you're a really good player, like a 7-8 win player, you're making what? A mistake every couple of games? Now your mistake eraser has a lot less value in terms of
right,
how it swings the game. So I think even stuff like that, like it's going to skew the win rates on HS replay differently than how good the class like is at the
yeah.
very top.
And
And
thankfully,
it's not
Keeper of
just
Oldemon isn't just a mistake eraser. It's
yeah.
it,
I mean, it's
it's it's
also
a
a really
Swiss
good
Army
yeah
knife,
yeah
right?
right. It's just very good. Period. So you're still getting value out of it, but it's also not just Keeper of Voldemort. What I like about Paladin in this meta, and what I think makes it so consistent, is that they added Subdue, which is like Keeper of Alderman without the body, but more intensely. But it serves the same kind of purpose: reducing your attack, reducing your health, getting rid of a really big threat. I mean, Subdue is a 2 mana polymorph that doesn't silence. It's
Yeah.
it's a pretty silly card.
It is a pretty silly card, and it's one of those things that I don't really appreciate Paladins
No,
having a
no,
lot of
just like you
access
don't like
to.
him having Keeper of Oldemon. I would rather have a Keeper of Oldemon than Subdue. Subdue is terrible. It's also lower bucketed than Keeper of Oldemon, which is fair. Keeper of Oldemon is a better card. We have the same ratings. But both of them are under bucketed. They're both in the second bucket. Keeper of Oldemon is in the top half of the second bucket. Subdue is in the bottom half of the second bucket. They do not belong in the second bucket. They definitely belong in the first bucket.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just more chances for the Paladin to have this effect,
Mm-hmm.
which is, yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, Paladins are going to play right now, kind of like how Paladins typically play. Paladins have not really changed in terms of, huge shifts in their class identity. They are still trying to get onto the board, and once they're on the board, they can take advantage of it with all of their buffs. Potion of Heroism is one of their most common cards. It's in the top five
Mm-hmm.
most common cards for Paladins, which makes a ton of sense. And then, they have ways to kind of really gain tempo through some minions like Keeper of Voldemort, Outdoor Peacekeeper. Outdoor is within the top 10 as well. And then for the curve toppers, we have Steed and also Vine Cleaver. And that's sort of how Paladins win. Sounds pretty familiar.
Yup. Yup. It's Paladin.
It's
It's
Paladin. That's
Paladin.
it.
So one more thing that's making Paladins really annoying right now is, and this is not really a bad thing to give to Paladins because I feel like it's something they always should have, but they, depending on the meta and what cards they have in their arsenal, it's sometimes better and sometimes worse, and certainly on the better side right now, which is their ability to heal themselves. Uh,
Yeah.
if you have the ability to heal yourself and you have the ability to taunt up with stuff like Steed that's like impossible to get through, then you have the ability to wipe away all of your mistakes when it comes to like facing aggro, right? Or like a mid-range deck that's decided that you are slower than them and is pushing the aggro. So it's a lot of it's a good amount of security. Ancestral Guardian is almost never going to get removed before it gets some healing in. Like you have I don't know. I've actually seen Flash of Light fairly frequently. I would never draft it, but other people are drafting it, and it's annoying me. And it kind of it works. It works in this kind of meta if you for security because this is a diverse meta. We talk about basically slower mid range decks being the best choice right now, usually, and that's where rogues and hunters excel in particular. That's, I mean, Zoo, right? Warlocks have a different take on it, but Zoo is essentially a slow mid range deck. It just
Yeah.
uses a lot of small creatures rather than mid range creatures because it has infinite card draw. So yeah, it's just it's good against that, and the paladins have not only the heals but also the ridiculous taunts to back up that heal. So if the paladin heals for a little bit and then taunts with a huge taunt, whether it's Pharaoh's Blessing or Spike Ridge Steed or a new challenger, you've got some problems.
Yep. All right. That's kind of it.
Yeah, I think we covered the I don't know, mid range to like and bad classes pretty well here. This is just like think of this as the companion piece to the episode we did 3 weeks ago. Because really, this is what it is. This is wrapping up the meta and talking about the classes that we didn't think you should be playing back then because there were no micro adjusts yet and they sucked. To now, where well, this is the final round of micro adjusts, right? I don't think Blizzard's going to micro adjust again. We're only 2-3 weeks away from the next rotation, and they have never adjusted it since wild rotations began. Within 1 month of the next meta kicking in, so we're going to be here for another 2-3 weeks. We've already been here for almost 2 weeks, and it's not a bad place to be. This is like if you want a data point on like what you should consider if you're trying to evaluate buckets going away, right? Versus buckets staying around. In a wild rotation meta, this is about as good as it gets with Blizzard at the helm. Like, I don't think
Yeah.
Blizzard can do really better than this. I don't think it's a great meta. I think Blizzard's done better before there were wild rotations when it comes to balance and like just interestingness. And also, obviously, the expansion, the current expansion is not particularly helpful with that. So compared to last year's expansions, but this is where we're at. We're in, I think in March, I said 3 months definitely of total crap, and then 9 months until they get it right, most likely. Well, we're what? We're like, uh, sorry, 4, 5, 6. We're six. We're 7 months in. 6 months in. We're 6 months in. We're about 6 months in, and Blizzard's gotten really close to getting it right. Or like as right as we would expect them to, right?
Right.
So if you're looking for and they're going to get rid of buckets, so when you're comparing the non-buckets world to the what Blizzard can do with buckets world, you got to take into account that every time an expansion comes out, it's going to be a mess for a month, like more so than in the non-buckets world. But this is the place to judge from. So I do like that Blizzard brought it back in the end. Like this is a good stopping point for the end of the buckets experiment. So whenever we look back on buckets, we can find this meta and say, look, this is what Blizzard can do with buckets. They've done it with buckets and wild up rotations here. They could probably do better than this, but I don't know. At least they could do here, right? So it's a good stopping point, and like honestly, it's better than I thought they'd get to at this point. They were kind of on my schedule up until this last patch, where they kind of got ahead of the schedule that I thought they were going to be on.
Yeah.
So that's it's a good endpoint.
Cool. All right.
All right, one last topic. Do you have a question from the goat for today?
No, I don't.
Okay, no question from
You
the goat
asked.
today.
No,
All right,
I don't.
all right,
Do
all
you
right.
have one?
No, not really.
I
Well,
can tell you guys a
oh,
little bit
oh yeah.
about
Sorry,
my
go ahead.
life.
What's happening in your life? Did something happen?
I'm opening up more Pokemon cards. I
Okay.
started playing Borderlands 3. There you go. Boom. Question from the
Wow.
go. Brought to you
The
by
the
Merps.
super
Brought to you by our
exciting, super
Patreons.
exciting
Give us
life of
money.
Merps. Brought to you by our patrons at patreon.com/grinning goat. No, but oh god, I was thinking of something. And then it fell out of my mind because I'm getting old. Oh yeah, if you're listening to this and we haven't announced it yet, because I don't think we've actually done it on the Lightforge. If you also watch our stream, Merps is coming back. Like for reals. Like not like for a stream here or there, but he is resuming his Monday night streams at 7:30 Eastern. My streams will still start at 7 o'clock Eastern until further notice. I may move my streams to match Merps's, but right now it's still going to be starting at 7. Um, Actually, I don't know. Should I just move it to match you so that we're all like kind of aligned on these weekday streams?
That's up to you, man. That's up to you. But
Okay, you know what? I'll keep mine for now. I'll keep mine for now, and then we'll see how confusing it is for people.
right.
So I'll start at 7 o'clock still on Tuesdays, Fridays. Nothing changes. Merps will start at 7:30 on Mondays, and our Sunday streams
Yes.
start with the Lightforge at 6 o'clock. That doesn't change either. So
Oh, wait. Sorry. Okay, nothing you say is important past this point. I do have a question from the go.
oh,
Yeah, I know. All right,
okay.
so all right, I'm gonna ask myself. All right, you can
I'm gonna
basically
chill out
just
here,
not.
drink some
All right,
coffee.
Merps, as an incredibly successful and good-looking arena expert, what are you most excited for this week? Why, thank you, Merps. Merps, I am most excited about Arena Rumble. Arena Rumble has been arranged by Sun Glitters. You guys should know her. She plays Arena. She has a lot of potted plants. And she has set up an arena tournament for
She
the
was she
community.
was on the Lightforge a few months ago.
She was. She was replacement Merps number 3 or something.
She was
Yes.
replacement nerves number sometime in the end of May.
I
That's
know.
what I remember.
But Sun Glitters was nice enough to set this up. Some of the details I will let you guys know right now, but you can also join Sun Glitters' Discord if you want to learn more. But we've already had tons and tons of people signing up. Adulta and I will be participating as well. the competition has already started, and it will extend until the upcoming Saturday.
Okay, so what is the competition?
What is the competition? So, if you are participating, and also anyone can participate, you just sign up. You do have to stream it. That's the only stipulation. Uh, Essentially, you have to draft and complete 9 runs on stream. And on as for class selection, unless all offered classes were played before, you have to pick a new class. So get some diversity there. And if you see druid, shaman, or warrior, they have to be picked when they show up and you haven't played it yet. So it really sort of pushes players to play these classes that don't get a lot of love, as we talked about. And if you want more details from the rules, because those are the general rules. If you want more details, you can join Sun Glitters' Discord, and the winner actually receives 40 gift subs. That's a lot. That's a lot of gift subs, and a custom emote as well. But who needs gift subs and who needs emotes when you have glory, right, and bragging rights?
It's all about the
So
glory.
yeah,
This is
but I think this
it's
is
like what Muzzy was talking about last week. He's like, yeah, I don't know, money, like, but are my friends playing? Like, are my competitors playing in this format? If so, I'm there. If not, I could be interested. But
I know. So if you guys are interested in just following this, or if you're interested in competing,
it's open to
this
everybody
it's open to
who can
everyone.
stream. Like, you don't have to be an
Yeah.
affiliate or a partner. You just have to start streaming on Twitch so she can like confirm that you have gotten the record that you say you have.
So she can confirm. Exactly. But I think this is nice because I really do believe the arena community has been feeling a little bit let down, a little bit abandoned. Like Papa Blizzard went to the store to buy some cigarettes, promised to be back to post the arena leaderboards, and Papa Blizzard never came back. One
Those
day,
leaderboards
Papa
have to be
Blizzard will
coming
come
at
back.
some point, right? They're like a month and a half late now. Like, I don't know. At some point, like, better late than
Oh,
never. Like, people spend a lot of time on those. So I really hope that whatever Blizzard's going through right now in their like communications and their like community team, that this gets picked up at some point. Like,
yeah.
but yeah,
Hopefully.
this is gonna be like, you remember way back in the day when Amaz did 100 in 10, where you get
Yeah.
100 wins in 10 runs. It's gonna be something similar to that. Only you only get 1 week for it, and you only get like, I mean, there's like 3 rerolls or something. But you basically get like a couple shots at it or something. I
Yep.
don't know the exact rules, but me and Merps are not going to reroll. We are going straight through as one team, Team Goat, and we're just gonna do 9 runs straight through. So if we win, shame on all of you.
Seriously, have you seen my preparation? Lack of preparation,
Oh my
really
god,
for this?
last week I think I made a misplay, like actually like a misplay that I caught and admitted to like every other game for like both
Wow.
nights. It was like it was one of the most like longest stretch of misplays, which is saying something for me. Um
But it doesn't matter because misplays don't matter,
no,
right?
some of those misplays mattered. Like, it was so weird.
What?
Most of them don't matter, obviously. But
Obviously,
obviously, like we're
obviously.
saying, 95% of them don't matter. But like this, the last week it was probably like 80% didn't matter, which is a
Oh
terrible
my
rate if
god.
normally 95% don't matter. Um, all right. Well, yeah. So that's happening, and that's going to be happening all week long. After the arena coup today, on Sunday, I'll be playing the first run, and then Merps will be doing 2 or 3 runs on Monday, and then I'll be doing 2 or 3 runs on Tuesday, and then me and Merps in some order will be finishing up all the remaining runs on Friday night. So Friday night stream may go a little long. Or
Who
maybe
knows?
you'll do go long on your Monday night streams. We'll see, but we'll get
We'll
all
see. We'll
nine
see. We'll
runs
see.
done
Yeah.
before the end of Friday. Cool. So let's end this with a card good bad. Card good bad is an epic card. We almost never talk about epic cards, but I'm really interested in this one because Warlock is on top right now, and I want to talk about Disease Vulture.
Why?
Disease Vulture is a 148. 148 is really, 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 really good. It is in the top of the second bucket. It's at the top of the second bucket for Warlock, so it's really, really, really good, and you should take it, even though it's in the top of the second bucket. Um, It is a 4 mana 3/5, so it's pretty much on curve. And if you hurt yourself, you get a random 3 mana card. Your hero power hurts yourself. So it seems like a pretty on curve card with a kind of ridiculous ability attached to it. A random 3 mana minion summoned on the board is like a lot. Like that's like a really big deal. And your trigger is your hero power plus all the synergies you could possibly get with it. So it's a little game breaking if you let it snowball, but overall, it's existing as a card and not totally destroying the entire arena. And that fascinates me because when we popped it in the algorithm, and it was like I think before we had the bucket information, it was a little higher. Once we got the bucket information, though, it was 148. That's not like terribly OP. That's just like the top end of premium. I like to say anything over 150 I have a problem with. So I guess I don't have a huge problem with this card, like, which is weird to say because it seems like a really problematic card. Like, why is this card not destroying lives and like taking names or more than it has?
I think, well, it is a little bit of a slow card, you know? Um, and I think one of the ways to win with Warlocks right now is to kind of zoo out and Demon Bolt. And I'm not saying this is a bad card for it, but they have just different ways to do it as well. So number one, you don't see it as much. Number two, when you do see it, it's sort of like, this is sort of what Warlocks are kind of doing anyways, and it doesn't add so much to it. It doesn't allow them to do something that they didn't do before, right? They just do it a little bit better. So
Mm,
it's not really like it's not a it's less a keeper of Oldemon and more like an ethereal conjurer, if you know what I
right,
mean.
right.
You
It
know?
makes your class do your class thing better. Like warlocks are good at
Yeah.
hurting themselves and putting a small thing on the board with their hero power. This hurts yourself, puts a small thing on the board, and lets you keep the other small thing on the board you were going to put in your hand. So you're like a little more efficient at doing that. But it was something your opponent expected anyway.
Yeah, definitely. So once again, it's still quite good, but not amazing. And also, I can see a lot of people. This is sort of the ooze versus raptor
They keep
effect,
it in their
right?
hand and don't play it as a 4 drop.
They just won't play it, or
Okay,
they'll.
guys, please play this as a 4 drop if you have no other plays. Please do it. Keep in mind, this is getting like most of its value from being a 3/5 body. Like, yes, it's getting almost just as much value from its ability, but not as much. The ability is not worth as much as the body. So if you need to do it and you don't have another 4 mana option, please play it. Don't keep it in
Yeah,
your hand.
yeah. I've definitely seen this before. Like someone essentially just played a what was it? Just played like a 3/3 on turn four,
Mm-hmm.
3 mana 3/3, and they had this in their hand. They just didn't want to play it, and I'm like, oh,
Especially if you're
okay,
a zoo deck. You need to zoo.
yeah,
Like, you can't afford to be anti-tempoing on turn 4 just to save some value, which you have anyway with your hero power.
yep, all right, but it is. No, I totally agree. It's definitely not a problematic card at all. The only time I have seen it pop off once where they put down the 3 mana Yeti, which damages you when it attacks. So they did that, followed up with a Vulture, and then if you have no answer, it just keeps on snowballing, right? So
Yeah. Yeah,
that's
it is a win
extraordinarily.
condition, but like you said, right? That was a win condition Warlocks had anyway. That's just made it more efficient.
Yep.
So it's like if Hunter's got a card that dealt like 4 damage to your face, like, yeah, that's really good for Hunter, but Hunters were gonna do that anyway. Um, cool, cool. Okay, I think that wraps it up for this episode of the Lightforge.
Excellent.
Until next time, this is Adwicta.
This is Merps. Bye, guys.